Why do so many women today fear real love? We live in an age where love is advertised on every corner of social media, where dating apps promise instant connections and effortless attraction. Yet, behind the swipe and the likes, there's an overwhelming sense of fear. A fear of vulnerability, of exposure, of giving up control. In a world where women are told they can have it all, career, independence, and freedom, why do they still hesitate when it comes to true emotional intimacy? The modern world may have changed the way men and women interact, but underneath the surface, something primal and ancient remains. Women, in the age of empowerment, are still wrestling with the same deep-seated fears about love that Dostoevsky spoke of centuries ago. It's a fear that isn't just personal, it's social, biological, and cultural. In the rush to build careers and carve out personal identities, many women today unknowingly build walls around their hearts. The pressure to be perfect, the constant comparison on social media, and the fear of losing oneself in a relationship make love feel like a gamble they're unwilling to take. But these fears, rooted deep in human nature, are not as modern as we think. Dostoevsky understood them well. In his view, real love was never a simple transaction of emotion. It was a test of everything a person thought they knew about themselves. It was about surrendering control and allowing someone else to have power over you. And in today's world, where the desire for power, control, and independence is more pervasive than ever, that very idea, letting go, scares women more than anything. This fear of love isn't just a relic of the past. It's a constant, silently shaping how women navigate relationships today. Love is sold to us as the ultimate goal. Movies, songs, and books tell us it's the answer to everything. Yet, when it comes to real love, the one that demands everything and gives nothing in return, many women hesitate. In today's world, where independence and personal success are the cornerstones of modern womanhood, the idea of surrendering control to another person feels like a step backward. The same women who thrive in careers, lead in their fields, and hold their own in competitive spaces are often the same ones who recoil when faced with the possibility of true emotional intimacy. Why? Because real love forces them to confront something far more terrifying than failure. It forces them to confront themselves. Unlike the idealized versions of love we consume on Netflix or Instagram, real love doesn't come with filters, edits, or carefully curated narratives. It's raw, messy, and demands vulnerability. Women fear this because vulnerability today feels like a weakness, something that can be used against them in the digital age where everyone's personal life is just a few clicks away. What makes love truly paradoxical is that the more a woman fears it, the more she craves it. In an era where superficial interactions are the norm, real love is seen as dangerous, a threat to the carefully constructed self that modern society encourages. Every relationship seems to come with a hidden cost: emotional, psychological, and even financial. Women today are told to be strong, self-sufficient, and emotionally independent, yet they are simultaneously told to want love, to seek connection. This conflicting message leads to anxiety around the very thing that promises fulfillment. Real love, the one that makes you give and receive without reservation, is seen as too risky in a world where people are afraid of losing their sense of identity. This fear isn't just theoretical. It's a daily battle that shapes how relationships form, evolve, and ultimately, whether they survive at all. In a world dominated by instant gratification, where emotions are filtered and curated for public consumption, vulnerability has become a liability. Today, we've been taught to safeguard our hearts as if they're the last pieces of something precious. Relationships are no longer about trust and emotional exposure, but about what we can gain or protect. Women, in particular, fear what they stand to lose when they give too much of themselves. In modern life, where the ability to maintain control is often seen as a measure of strength, allowing someone else to see your rawest emotions feels like giving them a weapon. Whether it's in the office, with friends, or in the digital world, being vulnerable means risking your reputation, your independence, and in many ways, your self-worth. In an age where people are always looking for the next best thing, where swiping right or left is as easy as a tap, true emotional connection feels like an act of surrender, a risk they'd rather not take. Yet, it is precisely in that surrender that real love exists. Beneath the veneer of self-sufficiency and emotional detachment lies the fundamental human need for connection, something that cannot be built without vulnerability. Modern dating culture has skewed this basic truth, turning relationships into games of status and power, where showing your true self means giving others the opportunity to exploit your weaknesses. The irony, however, is that real intimacy can't exist without vulnerability. Women today fear that intimacy because it requires them to trust, something that, in a world of hyper-connectivity, feels incredibly difficult to do. Every betrayal, every failed relationship, makes the walls around their hearts that much thicker. In this age of emotional armor, women must ask themselves, is the cost of vulnerability worth the potential of real connection? Or is it safer to remain emotionally guarded, never fully allowing anyone to get close enough to hurt them? Control has become a modern obsession. In a world where we can track our workouts, manage our finances with an app, and schedule every minute of our lives, control gives us a false sense of security. Women, especially in today's fast-paced society, have built entire lives around maintaining this control. They're expected to juggle careers, relationships, and personal growth while appearing effortlessly in charge of it all. This isn't just about managing a to-do list. It's about control over their emotions, their decisions, and, most importantly, their relationships. The problem is that when everything is held together by force of will, there's no space for love to breathe. When women fear losing control, they are not just protecting themselves from the unknown. They're safeguarding the fragile balance they've worked so hard to create. The fear of being overwhelmed, of losing one's sense of self in another person, is paralyzing. In the quest for independence, women often find that love, in its truest form, can feel like a surrender. But the paradox is that true love can only flourish when control is relinquished. While today's world might praise the strong, independent woman who never lets her guard down, real love requires the opposite: vulnerability and the willingness to let go. The more control women try to exert over their emotions and relationships, the more they stifle the very connection they crave. This fear of losing control isn't just personal, it's cultural. Society demands that women maintain a composed exterior, leaving little room for the chaotic, unpredictable nature of love. It's no wonder many women struggle to find deep emotional connections in a world that celebrates order and predictability. The truth is, no matter how much we try to control, love operates outside of reason, beyond the neat confines we create for ourselves. Until women are willing to face this uncomfortable reality and let go of the need to control every aspect of their emotional lives, they will continue to miss out on the love that could change everything. In today's world, independence has become an almost sacred ideal, a quality that every woman is expected to embody. The modern mantra of "I don't need a man" has been reinforced by social media, career-driven cultures, and the rise of the self-sufficient woman. It's no longer enough to have a career, pursue passions, or enjoy a sense of personal growth. Women are expected to do it all alone, without asking for help, without showing vulnerability. This notion of independence has led many women to build walls around their hearts, convinced that needing anyone will somehow undermine their strength. But the reality is that this independence, often worn as a badge of honor, is a shield. The stronger the shield, the harder it is to let someone in. Women today struggle with the very idea of needing another person, fearing that doing so will make them appear weak, or worse, dependent. However, the truth is that this illusion of independence is often just a defense mechanism against vulnerability and the pain that comes with it. Women have learned that the more self-sufficient they appear, the less likely they are to be hurt. But what they often fail to realize is that this supposed independence creates an emotional isolation that makes deep, meaningful relationships almost impossible. True intimacy requires the opposite of independence. It requires interdependence, the ability to rely on another person, to trust them with your flaws, and to accept their flaws in return is what forms the foundation of any real connection. While today's world champions independence as the ultimate goal, it is, in many ways, the very thing that holds women back from experiencing true love. Until they recognize that love is not a weakness, but a partnership, the cycle of emotional isolation will continue, leaving them with the false belief that they are better off on their own. In today's hyper-connected world, vulnerability is viewed as a liability. We're told to protect our feelings, maintain a level of emotional distance, and present an image of strength. Social media reinforces this image by showcasing perfect lives, curated personas, and the illusion that everything is under control. This culture of emotional suppression has led many women to live in a constant state of guardedness, afraid to truly let someone in. The fear of emotional exposure runs deep, because once you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you risk being hurt, rejected, or abandoned. This fear often stems from past experiences of betrayal or heartbreak, creating a mental barrier that is difficult to break. But in the process of guarding their hearts, women unknowingly build emotional walls that make it nearly impossible for a genuine connection to form. They convince themselves that if they don't need anyone, if they can do it all on their own, they'll never have to face the sting of vulnerability. Yet this self-protective stance only isolates them further, keeping them from the very love they crave. However, the reality is that love can only be born from emotional exposure. True intimacy, the kind that creates lasting bonds, requires showing your true self with all your imperfections and insecurities. Women who are afraid of emotional exposure often miss this critical step, staying in relationships that are shallow or disconnected, never allowing themselves to truly connect on a deeper level. The fear of being fully seen, of letting someone witness the raw, unfiltered version of yourself, is powerful. But it's in that very space where you let down your guard that deep connection and true love can grow. When women choose to face their fears and embrace vulnerability, they open the door to authentic relationships. Until they do, they will continue to chase the idea of love without ever experiencing its fullness. It's easy to see why many women today fear losing control in relationships. The modern world emphasizes independence, self-reliance, and the idea that you can have it all without needing anyone. But beneath this surface, there's an underlying tension, a fear that opening up to someone, trusting someone, will result in losing control of your emotions, your life, and your sense of self. This fear often shows up in subtle ways, holding back affection, avoiding deeper conversations, or staying emotionally distant. It's a defense mechanism to prevent the chaos that can come from fully investing in another person. In a world that praises individual achievement and autonomy, the idea of relinquishing control is a terrifying proposition. Women are conditioned to believe that surrendering control means becoming vulnerable, and vulnerability is often seen as weakness. But this misconception traps them in a cycle of isolation, where emotional connection feels like a risk too great to take. The reality is that true love requires a certain level of surrender, a willingness to trust, to be open, and to let go of the fear of losing control. Control, in many ways, is an illusion. It's the belief that we can manipulate outcomes, force situations, and dictate our emotional states. But love doesn't operate on a script, and no amount of control can protect someone from the uncertainties of emotional intimacy. When women allow themselves to let go of the need to always be in control, they open themselves up to a deeper, more authentic connection. It's in this vulnerability that love can flourish. The fear of losing control doesn't just keep women from love. It keeps them from experiencing the kind of relationship that's built on mutual trust, shared vulnerability, and emotional depth. Until that fear is confronted, it will continue to stand in the way of real, lasting love. In today's world, the pressure to live up to perfection is overwhelming, especially for women. Everywhere you look, there's an image of what success, beauty, and happiness should look like. Social media perpetuates this illusion, where everyone seems to have it all together. Perfect relationships, flawless skin, and lives that look like they're straight out of a magazine. This constant bombardment of idealized images creates a sense of inadequacy, as if no matter how hard women try, they'll never measure up. These expectations aren't just external, they become internalized. Women start to believe that they have to live up to this perfect standard, even in their most intimate relationships. And when they fail, which they inevitably will, the shame and disappointment can feel unbearable. The fear of not being enough becomes the prison that keeps them from opening up to love in its rawest, most unfiltered form. This burden of perfection not only keeps women from experiencing love, but it also drives them to protect themselves from getting too close to anyone. If they can't meet the expectations they've set for themselves, how can they possibly meet the expectations of a partner? The fear of failure in love becomes paralyzing. It pushes them to keep their guard up, never fully committing, always holding back part of themselves in fear that they'll disappoint or fall short. The irony is that love is never about perfection. It's about connection, vulnerability, and being seen for who you truly are. But when the weight of unrealistic expectations is constantly on their shoulders, women may never allow themselves to be seen at all. Until this cycle of self-imposed perfectionism is broken, real intimacy and love will always be just out of reach. The idea of merging lives with someone else is often romanticized, but for many women, it carries an underlying fear, the fear of losing themselves in the process. It's easy to see how love can become a kind of suffocation when your identity starts to blur with that of another person. Women are taught from a young age that they must be selfless, nurturing, and accommodating. These qualities are celebrated, but they come with a price. When a woman enters a relationship, the pressure to meet these expectations becomes more intense. She may start to feel as though she has to sacrifice her passions, dreams, or even her personality to make her partner happy. This fear of losing one's sense of self can prevent her from fully engaging in the vulnerability that love demands. How can you give all of yourself when you're afraid that doing so means you will no longer recognize who you are? This internal conflict can paralyze women when it comes to committing to love. The desire for connection exists, but it's constantly weighed down by the worry that they will disappear in the process. Love, in its truest form, requires a balance between connection and independence. But many women fear that this balance is impossible to achieve. They see relationships as a potential threat to their autonomy, and so they hold back, never truly allowing themselves to be loved for fear of being consumed. At the heart of this lies a deep-rooted belief that love requires them to give up pieces of themselves, pieces that they are not willing to lose. Until women can reconcile the idea that love doesn't erase identity, but rather enhances it, they will struggle to let go and experience the depth of connection that love offers. The pressure for women to present a perfect image of themselves is an ever-present force in their lives. Whether it's the way they look, the way they speak, or the way they behave, women are constantly under scrutiny. This perfection is not just physical, though that is often the most visible aspect. It extends to every part of their existence. Women are expected to excel in their careers, maintain an impeccable home, be emotionally available, and manage a social life that seems effortless. In the midst of all this, there's an unspoken rule. They must do it all with grace and without complaint. This unattainable ideal sets up a cycle of self-doubt and stress that women carry into every relationship. When they try to meet these impossible standards, they're often left feeling inadequate or like they are failing, even though no one has actually asked them to be perfect. This idea of perfection is ingrained into their minds from childhood, perpetuated by everything from media representation to family expectations. It creates a standard they can never fully achieve, which makes the concept of real, raw love even more intimidating. The idea of being truly loved and accepted for who they are, flaws and all, is a terrifying thought. It seems easier to present a polished version of themselves, one that fits the mold and earns approval, than to risk showing vulnerability. Real love requires an honesty that perfectionism cannot accommodate. It's the fear that if they let go of the facade, they will be rejected for what they really are. But the truth is that true love isn't about perfection. It's about embracing the imperfections and being accepted despite them. Until women can challenge the need for perfection, they will never be able to experience the kind of love that is deep, authentic, and free. For many women, the idea of emotional vulnerability is terrifying. Society conditions them to believe that being emotionally exposed is a weakness, something to be avoided at all costs. This belief is reinforced from an early age, as they are taught to be composed, to control their emotions, and to present an image of stability, no matter what they're feeling inside. In romantic relationships, this fear of vulnerability becomes a major barrier. Women often hold back, fearing that if they truly let their guard down, they will be judged, rejected, or worse, used. The possibility of being emotionally raw and unguarded creates a kind of paralysis, one that keeps them from fully engaging in the kind of deep, connected love they may desire. They may even sabotage their relationships because they believe that if they let themselves care too much, they will be hurt beyond repair. This fear doesn't just come from personal insecurities. It's a response to the broader narrative society has built around women's emotional needs. Women are often depicted as overly emotional, irrational, or even manipulative when they express their feelings too intensely. In response, they become wary of revealing their true selves to anyone, even someone they care about. They may push away potential partners or distance themselves from love, not out of a lack of affection, but out of a desire to protect themselves from the pain of being misunderstood or discarded. This constant war between the need for connection and the fear of being vulnerable creates an emotional distance that makes it difficult for women to form truly meaningful relationships. Until they confront this fear and begin to embrace their emotions without shame, they will continue to struggle with the very thing they desire: most authentic, unconditional love. Women, at their core, fear losing control. This is not just about external circumstances, but about the internal world of emotions and decisions. In romantic relationships, control becomes a coping mechanism. If a woman gives herself fully to another person, there is the potential to lose that control. It's a paradox. While they may desire love, affection, and connection, they fear that giving someone power over their heart could lead to pain, vulnerability, and uncertainty. It's easier to control the narrative, to stay in charge of the situation, than to surrender to the unpredictable and sometimes overwhelming force of love. This desire for control can manifest in many forms, keeping their emotions in check, not fully committing, or even pushing men away when things get too real. In today's world, where success and independence are valued above all else, the fear of losing control can grow even stronger. Women are taught to be self-sufficient, to handle their own problems, and to not rely on anyone. This self-sufficiency is often celebrated, but it also isolates them. This need to be in control can inadvertently sabotage their relationships. A woman might become so used to taking charge of everything that she resists allowing a partner to take the lead. This dynamic can be exhausting for both parties. Men, in turn, may feel that no matter how much they invest in the relationship, they will never truly break through the emotional walls that have been built. The woman remains guarded, keeping the reins firmly in her hands, unwilling to trust enough to let go. In the end, this cycle of emotional control leads to loneliness, as no real connection can form without trust and vulnerability. So, when a woman has everything in her life figured out and is still not fully present with her partner, what's really stopping her?